Hey, everybody, and welcome to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is an interfaith minister and mental health advocate. Her name is Kara Fortier, and we're going to talk with her about what it's like to play for a living, but she is also the founder of Playgrounding. You can find it at playgrounding.com. And really about grounding yourself in play and figuring it out for mental health and spirituality and lots of cool sides we haven't explored yet on this podcast. So we're going to do it right now. The show is brought to you by Playful Humans. If you need a little more fun, flow, and fulfillment in your life, that's what it's all about. Playfulhumans.com. Here we go. Kara, welcome to the podcast. So we like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week is brought to you by masks and other face covering. Cutting your makeup and shaving time by at least half. Hide behind a mask today. Here's my joke. My wife kicked me out because of my terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions. But don't worry, I'll return. I do a better Schwarzenegger than that, but I love that joke. That's awesome.
I love it.
All right. So tell us about what you've been up to. You were actually kind of one of the pioneers here in the play world, starting your podcast several years ago. And before a lot of these books and things were published, it's become a little bit of a movement, but you've been doing this for years now. Tell us about how you got started and how you see play in your life.
Wow. Thank you. It's so awesome to be here. I love that introduction. I got started because I had a complete crash. I completely crashed. My whole career, my whole sense of who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do in the world was called into question to the degree that I couldn't do it anymore. I was a minister. I had worked my whole life I went to seminary, but I knew I had to leave the church that I'd been a part of since my whole life, and it was scary. And I moved into this amazing place called the Brewery Artist Colony here in Los Angeles. And there were just so many people who inspired me and who just lived this playful existence. They worked, they're artists. They took me to Burning Man. And after that, it was like the first thing that had really sparked me in so long, that sense of playfulness that I had when I was there. And I kind of wanted to understand, like, what just happened to me? What was that? And so a friend of mine asked me, like, well, if you're gonna have to start over, let's start over when you're a little kid. What do you want to be? And it's that same thing I think we all sort of talk about eventually is, what did you want to be when you were a kid? And I remembered how I walked around with a little microphone and a tape recorder, and I loved to do that. I annoyed people to death. Like, here, talk to my little thing.
I did that all the time.
Right? Exactly.
I had the white and blue, like Fisher Price one. Did you have one of them? Where you like push?
I had like an old school huge box that was, it was horrible. But I loved it. And so I'm like, well, I've always wanted to do a podcast. I'm going to do that. And the fact that I was doing that, the topic itself, because I had no topic to do, I was, and so I read Stuart Brown's book on play, and I thought, okay, I'm going to figure out how these people live their life like this, because it was not something I experienced and something I understood how to do. And so I interviewed, and I had all these interviews for about 2 years until I realized that I didn't actually know what I was talking about. Like, I was interviewing other people, but I'm like, but I'm still miserable and I don't really play, and I got to fix that. So I quit for a while. I just said, I've got to stop and figure myself out, because why am I doing a podcast on play if I still can't internalize it? So when I started again, I had some fits and starts. It didn't start all right away, but this past year, it's really taken a hold again, because I'm really taking play as an internal spiritual guide for myself now, and I'm back.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think very similar to my story. I loved radio, and I wanted to be on the radio. I pulled that off in my career. My other one was astronaut. I haven't been to space, but I feel like that one could be in the future cards at some point.
Oh, why not?
I also have a kinship with you a little bit. I was raised Catholic, and I thought about being a priest out of high school and stuff. And I got some really interesting advice from a pastor there who said, If you're thinking about having a family and doing other things or being in the radio, you should go do that first, because you can do that and then become a priest. But if you become a priest, you can't get married, have kids, and go be on the radio. So
Yep.
it really sent me down, I think, the right path, and made me think about, okay, well, when I'm younger, what risks do I want to take, and what should I do first that I can't
Hmm.
do when I'm older, and really help me shape my career. But I think
Hmm.
I'm really excited for this podcast to talk about what that means for mental health and spirituality, and really why are we here, I think is the biggest question, right? And the more I think
Yes.
about it, it's really to enjoy the ride for
Yep.
me. I mean, everything else we have some educated guesses about, but we don't really know, right? How do you put that together? How do you answer that question for yourself?
Wow. Well, it's hard because I grew up so much in thinking that everything was answered, with a lot of with theological systems all set up. I was a philosophy major in college, so I was a theology major for my master's, and I loved Western thought because Western thought is just so buttoned up. And once I learned all the answers, you go out and you tell the world about them. It was that simple. But I never felt comfortable with that even as a kid. And I always felt like there's one thing I learned my from one of my favorite theologians, John Wesley, was that it was the first time I'd ever come up against the idea of paradox, that two things can be
Mm,
true at the same time. It's kind of a Schrodinger's God or whatever you want to call it. But I love the idea
that's
that
great.
there are so many things, and even now as I study to become an interfaith minister, uh, there are so many things that are paradoxes in the spiritual world. There, and the more we can acknowledge that nobody has all the answers, the more magical and wonderful it all becomes, because we have to be active participants in finding meaning and truth in our lives. That's one of the beautiful things about being a human, is that we are meaning makers. We are creators, and creators in not just the I can draw sense, but in the I don't know, I hate to use big, spiritually words, but in the almost like divine sense, like we are creators of our own lives. And I wasn't doing that. And so I feel like spirituality, sorry if I'm talking around, but I feel like spirituality is this big scary thing that you feel like it has to have like a specific definition or a name or a word. But I think everyone kind of knows what it is. People experience it when they're having a big crisis in their life, like someone they love is dying, or you receive a diagnosis. um spirituality also becomes important in those moments where you're trying to decide what to do with yourself. What is your why? That is something Chris Brogan taught us, and Seth Godin teaches us, but it's also a very spiritual question. What is your why to basically anything and everything you're doing in your life, not just your work? So yeah. I'm so,
No, I
yeah,
mean, I think you hit on a lot of huge things that I was looking forward to talking to you about. I mean,
mhm,
one is, what's our purpose in the life we want to
yeah,
design? I think sometimes those religions, again, I was raised Catholic, they have some really clear rules about what not to do, but they don't
absolutely.
tell you a whole lot about what to do with your life and how you maximize your time, and you share love, and you get connected to other people, and you make an impact. And so
Hmm.
for me, what it came down to was, really, no matter where you fall on religions, the what we know is we have a time here. So I want to be a
Hmm.
good human. I want to spread joy and love and be connected to people, whether there's an afterlife or not, or whatever that looks like, or reincarnation or anything else. Well, the point would still be to live your best life now. I
Yeah.
think is kind of where I did, is like you said, if all those things are true or not true at the same time, then I got to look at it. I think even if you go with an atheist approach, if there's not
Hmm. Yeah.
anything, well, certainly then the answer for me would be make the most of my time here. So
Yeah.
for me, it kind of washed out, where it's like, well, no matter what happens, it still makes sense to enjoy the ride, have fun,
Hmm.
get as much pleasure and enjoyment out of this, and connection with human beings. And I think you also hit on a couple of other things there, that when we're playing, we are connecting with other people and things larger than ourselves. We
Hmm.
are enjoying the ride, and we are finding what turns us on inside,
Hmm.
and brings us energy. And all three of those things really should be tied to your
Yeah.
spirituality, right?
Yeah, and I think we don't realize how much of a choice we actually have. And like you're saying, we learn a lot about what things we're not supposed to do, and I learned in church, I must decrease and he must increase, basically. And those kinds of scriptures, a lot of times people take them and it makes it sound like, well, what you want, you have to put that away. You're going to wait for God's will. You want to know what God's will is. And I think that can make people freeze up and feel like what they want must not be good. And some churches actually do teach that. So it's kind of it can feel kind of like a scary road, to go down, to start asking questions. And a lot of times, especially if you're in a religious community that doesn't like people who ask questions, I've been called dangerous before for wanting to talk about a non-gendered God, or just things that I thought were like interesting questions. So one of the first things I did after I left the church and felt free enough to really try some things out, I went a little crazy. I said, well, okay, let's play with this. Let's play make-believe. Let's play. I don't really know exactly what to do right now with myself. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna believe and play as if I'm an atheist. And what does the world look like to me? How do I feel about that? And there was a gentleman named Ryan Bell, who was an Seventh-day Adventist minister, who quit the church, and he said he's going to try atheism for a year. He actually has a podcast, and he is an atheist to this day. I didn't come out the other side as an atheist, but when I saw a movie called Finding a Friend for the End of the World with Steve Carell and Keira Knightley, I really had to think about what it means. Okay, if I'm an atheist now, what does it mean if a comet hits the planet and everything is gone? And for the first time in my life, I just looked around at all the things, all the beautiful things. I wasn't focused on, oh no, what do I do to make sure I go to heaven? I was focused on, this cat is so soft. The sky is still blue. There's still so much to fix on this planet. But I just started to appreciate nature more. And I started to understand humanist ethics, and the way that an atheist looks at the world is not void of beauty. And, they have a different way of seeing things. And it was the beginning of my path to begin to see every human being as having their own why, their own way of seeing the world. And for me, it took using my playful imagination to jump out of a place that felt at home, because it had been where I was my whole life, and go, okay, well, today I'm going to just declare this is what I'm going to see what the world is like from this outfit. And play dress up with my spiritual thoughts and life. And the path that brought me down, I had no regrets at all. In fact, I'm so glad I did that and started asking all those questions, even all the way to that point, because now I know that what I believe is genuinely from my heart. And I did recapture a bunch of stuff from my old life, but I also found a whole bunch of new stuff. So yeah.
I think that's really, really cool. I got a lot of follow-up questions, but my first thought is that's kind of what I did too. I figure, some people who are religious say, well, this matters because it has eternal consequences. But I think on the flip side, if you are atheist, you say, well, this matters because there's not any, this is all you get. This is your one shot. I think both are equally compelling cases to make something now, to not wait, to don't hesitate, don't miss your shot, don't take things so seriously. Like you said, if a comet comes tomorrow, your answer has to be maximize what you have now. It's really interesting. So a couple of other questions for you came to mind. Number one was, did you ever figure out how to play? What did you land on? What type of play do you enjoy?
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. I struggled with that a lot. When I quit playgrounding for a while, I needed to come to terms with some trauma related issues in my life, some related to assaults, some related to just being, it's called religious trauma syndrome. It's a whole thing. But basically what trauma does is it guts you. It takes your own, I don't know what you want to call it, my volition as a being with independent thoughts and forward motion. I mean, it basically just guts you. It takes that inner core that drives each one of us, and it just dampens it. It calls into question. It snuffs out the light. And a lot of abuse victims experience these kinds of things. A woman named J.B. Lee Finch wrote an amazing book on religious trauma syndrome. She talks about how she came out the other side of this and she didn't know what her favorite color was. And I went, Oh my gosh, me
Wow.
too. Favorite color, like what a thing. And when I did figure out my favorite color, my hair's been dyed this color for almost 7 years, 8 years now. But I mean, it's like the weird little things that you can grab onto and go, yes, I like this. You don't realize even when you're in the middle of it, how devastating that is as a person to not feel, it makes you look to everyone else to tell you what to do, to tell you what you're supposed to feel. So I basically discovered play again through going to a eating disorder group where I was learning
Wow.
about intuitive eating. It was to get off of the diets and binges and all the things that, and one of the things we did was we followed our food every day, not to track calories, but to say, how hungry am I? How, what am I in the mood to eat? What did I end up eating? How did I feel after? It's such a weird thing to do. But I started to realize that if I was hungry for noodles, I could eat them. And not only could I eat them,
Right.
but that I wouldn't want them for every single meal for the rest of my life. And it would not ruin my body and turn me into a toxic, smelly, heap of goo, which I think, as a person who's, all into the health podcasts and all the things, I was always trying to find the right way to eat. And what I realized as I kind of came through that, and I was in a group that is so, are intuitively eating. What about intuitively living? What
Mm.
about like thinking about the things that you do when you go throughout your day? If I suddenly am doing a task that my jaw is aching and I'm grinding my teeth and I'm just miserable doing it, okay, how does that feel? Why do I feel that way? I started taking my eating journaling, which I don't have to do as much anymore because I just know if I'm in the mood for strawberries, that's what I'm gonna have. If I'm full, I stop. It's just a wonderful way to live. Really,
That's
really is.
great. Yeah.
Um, but I wanted to expand that into other areas of my life. And that's where I met play again. That's where I came back full circle to playgrounding because, okay, well, I like blue. So what else do I like? So I started experimenting with things. I got my old dollhouse out and I started, renovating it. And at first I thought, I'm going to make this all like little living room. It's really like a pretty little living room. I'm like, what if I take all my Burning Man tchotchkes and just fill the house with all kinds of weird stuff from Burning Man? Or what if I like put
That's
on
great.
this wall, I'm just gonna do googly eyes all over the wall. So I just had Google eyes all over the attic wall. And just it's silly, but it just in my head that was such a big thing because I was all about doing everything exactly the way you're supposed to, following all the rules, making sure that God still loves you and that the community at your church is not going to condemn you to hell. I have experienced being shunned before for a divorce when I was very young. So it takes a lot to go from the trauma of being afraid to even touch what you actually want because you want to keep that safe. You're not going to let anybody see it, to actually expressing it and experiencing it. Because I don't want to be that person. And when somebody asked me, well, what if you could do anything, what would you do? Back in the very beginning, I burst into tears. I didn't
Yeah.
know how to answer that question. And realizing I didn't know how to answer that question was devastating. So coming to play again has been a mental health process. And I have this awesome play, like silly tree, like house thing that now I also realize that I'm an introvert that had been forcing myself to be an extrovert for my whole life. Um, I started changing the way I deal with my friendships. I stopped trying to be like everybody's friend. I started just investing in really close friends. Like I just started to listen to my gut and I've recreated my life in an image that reflects who I am for the first time in my life.
I love that you hit on so many things there. So, um, I love what you said about mental health. I think a lot of people get there. I want to talk more about that here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love what you said about finding the why. We've mentioned that a couple of times so far. And where I landed on that was there's no one answer. So everybody
Oh,
thinks there needs to be one purpose for my life. Well, it can change. We're human beings. I mean, if you think about like a classic red brick that people make chimneys out of, there's not
yep.
one purpose for that. We pave streets with it. You can make sidewalks. You can make it a doorstop. I mean, it can be millions of things. It doesn't have to have one purpose. We're multi-complex human beings with
Yep.
feelings. There's no way we're here for one thing, right? I mean,
Yep.
we're here for
Mm-mm.
lots of things. And like you said with the dieting, that really rang true for me, obviously with weight loss and other things that I've tried to do, but also with
Mhm.
just how you live. Well, you
Mhm.
can't work 24/7. You're going to have to sleep and recover. You can't
Yep.
play 24/7. Both you and I love to play and have fun, but you can't do it.
Yeah.
You're going to need to sleep. You're going to need to make money. You're going to have to eat, pay bills. There's, things that you're not going to like taxes and stuff that you just have to do.
Yes.
But we can figure out a better balance for these things, in that we all need to recharge too. So even people that are extroverts and love to play can't do that the whole time. They'll get tired eventually. You need to sit down and read a book or something and go back introverted to recharge. So I love all of that and that philosophy for me. But I wanted to see what you've learned from so many podcasts here. What did anybody particularly jump out and inspire you, of like somebody you think was nailing it and really playing and making the most of their life, or maybe was a play role model for you?
Oh man. Oh my goodness. This is so hard. There have been so many amazing people. They're all rushing into my
Yeah.
oh. Um I think that I think that some of the most inspiring people to me, there's one that sticks out. His name is Tony Perrone. He's at the University of Washington. He's a professor and he teaches improv. And he was the first one to teach me what it meant to live not by a script, but to just
Yeah.
encounter every moment as it comes and deal with that moment as is. And I had never really thought of that before as playful. I mean, I went through an acting phase I was never meant to be an actor, but I just loved it. And I did a little improv, but I wasn't very good at improv because I was always so worried about doing everything right. And so when Tony was on, this was really right before I stopped doing the podcast for a while, because I started to really think, oh, maybe I could do this. So Tony was one of the first people who really made me feel like this was something I could be a part of, the community of people who play. I also, man, this is hard. Oh no, Scott Froschauer also. I think is a play idol for me, because he creates signs. He goes around the world and he puts up signs that look like regular traffic signs, but they say different things on it. It really makes people stop and think. And I really love, I did an interview with him to talk about his work. And I just thought a lot of people have ideas for things we could do to sort of like jolt people out of their regular way of thinking in the world. They're all over the United States and who knows where else, I can't remember. There are people who are just walking past his signs, seeing one love instead of one way. He actually sells a sticker that you can go out and, vandalize. Put love
That's
over
great.
way, so it says one way,
Yeah.
one love. And so I love that, because he's straight out of the Burning Man, like, world, the early Burning Man world. So
Yeah.
very Suicide Club slash, yeah. So I mean, I love that kind of stuff, just being kind of rogue.
Well, I think that's great. Rogue is definitely a challenge for people like you and I that were raised in good, environments. Well, I guess not necessarily good environment, but to be good and fit in with the environment. So
Preacher's kid.
and I love the other one you said too, which is like your diet thing of living in the moment, that you don't have to make a decision of what you're going to eat for the rest of your life or how you're going to respond to this for the rest of the life. You just have to do the next right thing, right?
Exactly.
I think I stole that from Frozen, but Frozen 2. But anyway, I love it. It's a great line. So now I want to go back to the mental health stuff, because you said something else that triggered me, where a lot of times we talk about getting back to center, and sometimes religions even do this, like finding your center and being quiet and calm and peaceful. And I think there is something to that about resting and resetting and getting back to a neutral place. But I never hear enough about the positive, getting past that and getting back into a positive momentum and living with an engaged life and a fully present, that we want the peaks. And I know we all try and limit the valleys, but we want peaks too. We don't want to just flatline our life and be like, okay, now I'm just going to sit here and zen and I'm totally balanced. Nobody move because I'm okay here. So how does that play out for you in your play research and stuff with mental health, of helping people get back to thriving, not just recovering from the trauma? I think both have a place, but What
Yeah,
does that mean
yeah.
to you?
I really enjoyed. I think you talked to Meg about your cousin about this, and your the last one an episode I heard of your podcast, and I really enjoyed this, thinking about it as the like the
Yeah,
heartbeat
the
line
sine curve. Yeah,
going up
heartbeat.
and how like if it's straight, it means you're dead. It means you're not. But so there is. So when people do meditate, when they come to center, different people have different goals when they meditate. I believe that when I'm meditating, even there are times where I'll play my piano, I'll just practice my scales and try to just not realize what I'm doing. I try to like go into flow if I can and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
It's not making me neutral. It's making me strong. When you can focus your mind and bring it to, and I'm not saying this as a person who's like achieved this. I'm still obviously in process of all of this. I've learned the more that I've gotten back to contemplation and prayer and meditation, more as meditation as a foundation, I'm stronger to handle when I'm in the ups. I'm not afraid of the coming down because it all, we all know that. I used to feel like if something good happened, the other shoe was going to drop and I shouldn't get excited. But what happens when you're strong mentally is that when those good times do come, you just go, this is amazing. This is great. I know other times are going to come, but I'm going to love this right now. And then when things go back down, you are strong enough to handle those ups and downs. And staying neutral might feel safe. And I think that's what a lot of people who are protecting themselves, and especially people who experience trauma, they just don't want any movement. Just keep it in. But that, like bringing it from being like an EKG kind of thing to colors. Your life
Oh, I
can
like
have
that spectrum.
more
Yeah.
brighter colors. Your spectrum expands. You get to see the lighter lights and the different pastels. You get to go down into the deep dark. There's just more to it. And I think also accepting mystery and accepting paradox. Having everything just so means you have to have answers to everything. But there is the logos, which is kind of the keeping everything in line side, and then there's this thing called the eros that I love to think about. It's this yin yang thing where
Yeah.
yes, we have to answer our emails, we have to call that person back, we have to do our work, but we also can embrace the other side of who we are and what the universe is, which is chaos and mystery, and not just toss it away. We can play with it.
Yeah, and that's where I've landed. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this philosophy, and feel free to disagree because you did open my eyes there to something else that I hadn't thought about. But what I've been trying to work on, especially since 2020, we know there's a lot of trauma on there. Is my definition of trauma is getting stuck and not moving
Yeah.
through it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been trying to like cry more or to feel more, even the bad stuff, because then that lets me feel the good stuff. If you keep shutting it down, you're like, no, I'm not going there. No, I'm not dealing with it. Your body's stuck and your brain's stuck. That's not okay. And you're going to put these restrictor plates or blinders on your life where
Mm-hmm.
if you just go, okay, I'm just going to cry for 90 seconds and get it out of my system and appreciate that this is a moment where I'm missing something or I'm feeling love or I'm not feeling love that makes me appreciate other parts of it. It's not as scary. And then you can move through it and you can come back to center and go back to positive and appreciate things
Yeah.
more. That's kind of where I've landed. But in your work with, people with trauma or your own trauma, do you see that too, that they actually need to feel the bad stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's weird because I've only recently been learning a lot of this. I had a
Mhm.
gentleman named Vince Gauman on a couple months ago, and I knew I had heard things about trauma. People talk about trauma. I read these books, but I didn't understand there was actually a physiological component that can even get passed down through generations, that are actual strands of proteins. And I had thought that fight, flight, or freeze were three options, but
Right.
flight and fight are the options that actually mean you're resolving your trauma. I'm oversimplifying this, I'm sure. So, but freeze means that you don't deal with it at all. You don't
Mhm.
cry, you don't fight and kick and scream and try to get out, or you don't just run away and protect yourself, which is what we're able to do. But a lot of people don't feel like they can flee. They don't feel like they can fight. And we just have to suck it up and take it and not do anything. And that is really bad for us, for our health, for of our physical and our mental health. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of devastating how now we all are in this position where there's not much we can do to fix
Yeah.
anything, you know? And really the best thing we can do for ourselves is be really honest about how we feel. And the place where those things come up are when we do things maybe we don't want to be doing. If you find yourself drinking more than you want to, if you start doing destructive things, that might be your body or something in you saying, things aren't right, things aren't right, things aren't right. You're not acknowledging this. You're not acknowledging this. Let it out, let it out. It's not
Well,
easy,
that's what I
but
was going to
it's worth
say too, is that people don't think about that, right? Drugs
No.
and alcohol don't numb just the bad feelings. They numb all
No.
the feelings.
Yep.
So you got to be able to do both extremes. And that's what makes life interesting for me. And I think that really does help people play is in order to play a game, you have to be willing to lose the game, right? So that
Yep.
means
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
you win and sometimes you lose. And it is a yin yang thing for me that it's like, if I want to play more, that means I have to take more risks. I have to lose more. I have to fail more. I have to, try things that might not work, as our friend Seth Godin likes to say,
Yes.
right? Because that's what the interesting part of life is. If you keep it all controlled and safe and under wraps and following the rules, it just becomes monotonous and boring. So I want to end on a positive note, because I feel like we took a little bit of a turn there, but very important to do. What else have you learned about play, or anything that you think people should know or experience that they probably haven't?
In play, there's no 1,000-foot drops. And when you watch puppies play fight, they're not really fighting, but they're learning skills that they could use to fight. If you let yourself imagine, like I did, something that I thought would kill me or send me to hell, which was, what if I imagine myself believing something else? But with play, we get to dream up our life and see how it feels. We get to try it on like a little kid playing dress up. And I feel like those are the aspects of play we sometimes forget. It's not just about having fun. It is. It obviously is, because we wouldn't do those things if we didn't think they were fun. But we get to try things on, and we get to do it in a context of no 1,000-foot drops. And when we come out the other side, we still get to choose. We still get to be like, no, that felt too weird for me. I'm going to go back over here. But you experienced it, and now you can do that. And so I just think there are aspects of play that are just so powerful and go so far beyond just being something enjoyable. And that's what I want to say.
I love it. Again, we're talking with Kara Fortier, and you can find her at playgrounding.com is her website. Great blogs, awesome podcast. If you're listening to this as a podcast, go subscribe to hers right now on your favorite channel, Playgrounding. So we like to end with a game, Kara, but it has to be your choice. Would you like to play or walk away?
Oh, I'll play.
All right, here we go. Spinning our game wheel to see which game you are landing on. You got Awkward Questions. Awkward Questions is one of my favorite games. It may be more fun for me than it is for you, but I'll answer these too. So let's start with, as a theological person, I feel like I have some good questions for you here. If you could choose to have a child who was ugly and very smart, or good looking but kind of stupid, which one would you choose?
I want a smart kid. Either way. Because I don't think
like
there's
that.
any such thing as ugly.
No, I think you can definitely figure your way out of either one, but there is something to ignorance is bliss here too, that if you were if you didn't know, if you're dumb, you typically don't know that you're dumb, which is beneficial. But I think you're right. I would rather go with that. Go with smart. Now, here's a fun one. What's the weirdest gift you have ever received? Weirdest gift you have ever received?
Oh, brother. Oh, I probably this.
That is weird. The scream doll.
I don't have any idea why I got it. My mom thought it would be fun, but I'm literally obsessed with it, and I've had it on my desk since I was like a teenager. I
Right.
don't know why. It's like the one thing that I it's like my little doll
It's
that
a
I have to
blow
have.
up too. It's not stuffed. It's blow up.
No, it's a blow up scream
Yeah.
doll. And I just love it. Like there's still like tape and things from all the years that I tried to like put it on different things. This is like from like probably like 15, 20 years ago.
That's
My
awesome.
mom gave it's a strange gift that didn't make any sense, but I'm obsessed with it.
So I was thinking about my answer here, and I'm pretty sure in my entertainment days I've received a banana hammock in a gift exchange, like a white elephant gift exchange, which was
that's awesome.
it was definitely a great fun gift to open, as long as you're with friends and it wasn't a family situation. So I didn't open that in front of my grandma or anything. But last one, this is the hardest one I've ever given anybody, but I feel like you know, if you're going to be an interfaith minister, this one might come up.
Okay.
It's basically the boxcar problem. But would you save a friend's life if you knew it would kill a stranger?
Oh man. Oh man. Oh,
Yeah, I told you I was bringing the heat.
jeez. Is this the Good Place or something? Oh man. Jeez. If I knew it would kill a stranger,
Yeah.
but if I let my friend live, the stranger dies. If I let my friend die, the stranger lives.
Yeah.
I think if I had it in my power to save anyone's life, I would.
Yeah.
And the person in front of me is the friend. Yeah, that would be hard. But I feel like just being a human and having compassion on the humanity that I would feel in that moment, I would probably want to save my friend. And knowing that one of the two people would die, it sounds selfish, but I'm just being honest to an ethical dilemma.
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
imagining
that's where
myself in that
I
situation.
would land too. Definitely what you can control. You can't control what happens to the stranger. You're not doing it.
Mm-mm.
But
If I have the
those
power to
boxcar
do it,
problems are
right?
easy. I think like if you save, you know, you can save one person, but 6 other people die, and you have to choose whether 1 or 6 die. I mean, I think you have to always kind of go with the most or the one with the most you know, relevance to you, because that's the choice. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, an interesting one, not particularly fun, but I appreciate you playing awkward questions. You made it to the
love
end.
it.
So
Thank
again,
you.
check her out. Thank you so much, Kara, for being on the show, and subscribe to her podcast right now. Go check out the website, playgrounding.com. That's Kara Fortier, interfaith minister and mental health advocate. I'm Mike Montague at Playful Humans. You can subscribe to the Playful Humans podcast. Give us a thumbs up. We love reviews and comments as well. Suggestions for future guests. And don't forget to go to playfulhumans.com, take your playful personality quiz, and join our community. The clubhouse is there for other people who want to have fun as adults, go out there and live their best life. So check it out, playfulhumans.com.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine and go out and play.
Bye, everybody.